vm.filteron equals China, and it's back to filtering on China. But that still doesn't do anything for letting me do that. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get rid of this, and then I'm going to add a new directive we haven't seen yet. Data ng model equals vm.filteron. Doesn't matter what it's called as long as it matches this one down here. So these two have to match. Okay, so with that done, now I can type China in here and it changes. If I type Colombia, it changes. If I type SKI, it gives me all of the products with SKI somewhere in their name. And it took very, very little to actually do that. So let me talk about what's going on here. So this is creating a new object or a new property on VM, on this controller, called filter on. And then down here, it's listening. Not only does it know about that property, it's listening for any changes to that property. So anytime vm.filteron changes, it also changes down here. It changes everywhere you see VM filter on. So if I do something like filtering on, vm.filteron, and I start typing in here, China, that updates automatically. Colombia, bagels, whatever I put in here, it's going to update automatically. So there are two things we're going to talk about here. One is the view model, and one is two-way data binding. So this VM stands for view model. Did I already talk about view models? I don't think so. Okay, cool. So VM stands for view model. In Rails, the job of a controller is to take data from the model, make it show up in the view. Exact same thing in Angular, to take data from somewhere, to take these different models of data and make them show up in the view. So VM, view model, that's like a fancy word for this inside the controller. The view model basically is an instance of the controller. So that's why I'm calling this thing VM. I could call it anything I want, but it's forcing me to remember that Angularists call this thing a view model. So the view model is just it's the object that's available both inside the controller and inside the view that has all of the data attached to it. That's the view model. So if you want to sound really smart and up on your Angular, then file that one away, what the view model is. It's an object that's available both in the view and in the controller that has data and stuff on it. It's basically the same thing as, like, imagine I did @filter_on. That would sort of be the Rails equivalent. So VM dot and @ are effectively the same thing. So that's why this is called ng model. A model in Angular refers to a piece of data. In Rails, it refers to like an entire thing from the database. But in Angular, it refers to just one piece of data, like this filter on. Or like I could put, name in here or something, and that would become a model. So a model in Rails is an entire record from a database. A model in Angular is not. That's one of the things in the lesson plan up here, down here in this little thing at the bottom. So an Angular model is like a Rails models field. So two-way data binding, that's that horribly sounding thing that I mentioned. It works like this. So I have my computer. I don't use that. I have my browser. And then I have JavaScript, which is sort of like the back end of my browser, if you will. And then in here, I have vm.filter on. And then over here, I have vm.filter on. This two-way data binding thing means that whenever this changes, this will automatically be updated to reflect that change. Whenever this changes, this will be automatically updated to reflect the change. So two-way data binding means anything that the user types into the browser is automatically updated in JavaScript's own memory. And anytime something updates in JavaScript's own memory, it's also updated in the browser. this is always going to match this. These two things are always going to match. It's called two-way data binding because the data goes two ways. If I update this, then the data is sent over here. If I update this, the data is sent over here. So those two things are going to match. What's really going on underneath the surface is something like, it's like input dot on key press function controller dot input dot name or dot val this dot value, something like that. If we wanted to do this without Angular, then we would need to put all sorts of like event listeners on there and all sorts of other stuff. Angular takes care of all this stuff for you, making sure that the stuff on the back matches the stuff on the front. Later on, when we start doing things with databases, you're going to be able to add another thing over here. And if this guy is hooked up to a database, filter on, it's also going to update there as well. So wherever this data is being updated, anywhere in the process, it's automatically going to be updated everywhere else as well. And that's two-way data binding. Kyra.
Because you named the variable VM, and when you just gave an example, you were saying, when you were pointing to it, you said that it was the model. So in this case, does the VM, is that something that's standard when you do filter on, or is it our variable that we define?
It's a variable that you defined. So if I was calling this Wombat, then this would also be Wombat. This doesn't have to be filter on, this could be anything. I'm just calling it filter on because it's like, oh, I'm going to filter on China. It's just like my way of remembering it. It doesn't have to be called filter on, it could be called any old thing.
Okay, I think that just confused me. Okay, so...
Could you put it on Slack, actually?
I could, but does it know to filter because you have to filter and a colon?
Yeah, so this, okay, so filter on and filter are two different things. This does have to be written this way. Filter colon is always going to be written like this. Filter on, that's just the name of a variable. So this could be, here, I'll do Wombat here. And that's perfectly fine. Now it's just filtering on whatever the value of vm.wombat is. This is just some random variable. This name doesn't matter. This name is important. This name is not important.
And then the Wombat has to be in common in those two places, but it doesn't have to be on our JS file.
Right. Yep. Filter on is not in the JS file either. Like there's no filter on in here. It's just something, it's a variable that I'm creating sort of on the fly.
But it's filtering because you have filter colon.
Yep. Yeah, if I forget this colon, I think it's probably just going to throw an error at me, actually. I'm not entirely sure. Yep, it's going to throw an error at me. So I have to have filter colon, or it's not going to work.
And that line before it?
Yeah, that's another thing, is it's just syntax. It's sort of like, hey, this is what I'm repeating, and then here are all the options for it. There's everything after that pipe. You don't have to have filter in here if you don't want to. Brad?
For where you say VM filter on in form control,
Mm-hmm.
you have that slash between filter on.
This?
Slash one more. The input.
Oh,
Yeah.
I have no idea why that's there. Oh, it's because it used to be right here, and I just put the space in the wrong place.
Okay, so we don't need that slash.
No. I mean, I only have it there because I like to put a slash at the end of my inputs, but that's just HTML. It's nothing to do with Angular. Good catch. All right. Filter. Okay, and then the last thing I'm going to do is it would be nice if this total value updated whenever I change the quantity down here. So if I put in 2, then this would be whatever that times 2 is. So that's what I'm going to do next, is I'm going to make that happen. I'm going to create a method over here. So I've just created properties so far. Now I'm going to create a method, and I'm going to call it total value. It's going to be a function. And then I'm going to say var total equals 0. And now I'm going to loop through each thing in data. And to total, now I'm just doing math. To total, I'm going to add the product.cost times product.quantity. And then I will return the total. Now, product.quantity isn't anywhere in here. There's no quantity in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, well, I want to get some two-way data binding on this guy right here. Whatever is typed in here, I want it to be saved to something called quantity, to product.quantity. So which attribute that I've used so far am I going to use to do that two-way data binding? Yep. Exactly. Data ng model equals, and then I'm going to put product.quantity in here. And so this is going to give each product a quantity property. So now when I run this, well, I haven't told it to do anything with this total value yet. I want the total value to show up right here. So I'm going to do vm.total value. And because it's a function, I have to put parentheses after it. And now check out what happens. I get not a number. So that's because not all of these have quantities, and so it's trying to like multiply by 0. So what I'm going to say is, if the product has a quantity, then add that to the total. Now, I think this will work. So if I do 2, I get that. If I do 3, whoa, whoops. And I can just keep adding things on there. And then I get sweet numbers like this. So what can I do to this number to limit it to 2 decimal places? 2 fixed, yep. 2 fixed. I'll do it right here. 2 fixed.
Is that round?
That's a good question. Probably. I don't know. Let's find out. 2.3. How do you round? Oh, God. Okay, yeah.
5, 6.
Oh, yeah. Good point. Okay, we'll try that. 2 fixed 2. No, I guess not.
Just truncates it, or
That's interesting. So I guess
it rounds down for 5.
that's weird.
Try 0.355.
That's unconventional.
What the
Weird.
Wait, what?
That's actually the rules of rounding. So 5,
Yeah,
6, 0, 0, 0 rounds down.
Yeah. So
5, 1 rounds up.
Oh.
if you put on 3, 4,
5, 0, 0, 0, 1
So it's
rounds
treating
up also.
355 as 5, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0.
Exactly.
That's okay.
All right, whatever. Cool.
If you put a 1 way out there, it would go up.
I'm glad you know better than I do.
That's weird.
Anyway, so we're going to go back to things that I do know how to do. Yeah, so now this is working really well. Cool. Hold on one second. Just before I forget, one thing I want to point out is you may have noticed this tab index thing right here. This is another thing that has nothing to do with Angular. Let me show this to you without it. Yeah, this is just plain old HTML. I'm going to show this to you without that tab index thing. So when you hit tab, by default, it's not doing it. Come on, thing. Oh, that's because I deleted the whole line. Didn't mean to do that. Okay, there we go. Okay, so by default, when you hit tab, it goes to the next input or the next link. I don't really want it to go to the next link. If this is a cool little inventory tracker thing, I just want it to go to the next input. So what you can do is you can put tab index equals -1, and it says when you hit tab, don't go to this thing. So now it just skips those links altogether. So not an Angular thing, just a built-in HTML thing.
Why is -1?
Because you can set like tab index 1 or 2 or 3, and then when you hit tab, it goes in that order. If you set -1, then it just ignores that altogether.
It ignores the index of 0.
No, it just ignores this element. When you hit tab, it's not going to highlight this element. It's just going to skip it. Yep.
So none of the anchor tags with that data ng attribute. That's what it means basically. The data ng href.
Oh, that doesn't have anything to do with tab
That
index.
doesn't have anything.
No, anything with an href is going to be highlit when you tab. And so if I put like tab index equals -1 on here, then the quantity is going to be skipped when I hit tab. Now it just goes down the notes column. So So again, not an Angular thing, just a little HTML thing. All right, so I think that's it. So now, why don't you? Actually, I think I'm gonna do a mandatory break for 5 minutes. So please, like, get up and move, and then when you come back, you can start working on this.